Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Sunday, October 26th. Nice little Sunday afternoon here in the Midwest. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you, recapping the first two games of the World Series and getting you ready for Game 3 on Monday. We figured, why not? Why not use the off day to get the show out a little bit early for everybody? Be a part of that Monday morning commute or the effort to ward off the Sunday scaries. I mean, it's been a great series so far, We'll dig into all the happenings so far. Let's start where it began. Game 1. What a game. What a surprising game, too, because the Jays patched together a 9-run sixth inning. Just doing kind of typical Blue Jays stuff. Knocking Blake Snell out of the game in that inning. Getting into the underbelly of the Dodgers bullpen and doing a lot of damage along the way. I think it's interesting because, the first thing about this game that stood out to me was that Blake Snell went back to a more regular level of Blake Snell command, where he didn't have everything working. His fastball's up. He was missing kind of often with elevated fastballs. That was a problem. The change he had, he was dotting those down and away when he wanted to. But this was more of a fair battle. The Blue Jays bats against Snell in game 1 felt like an actual even tug of war sort of matchup for the better part of 5 innings.
Yeah, and the pesky Toronto approach of fouling pitches off actually worked for them as I thought it might. And that start there, he had 22 foul balls, Blake Snell did. And as a percentage or as a raw number of foul balls, that's in the top 10% of all of Blake Snell's starts across his career in the postseason or regular season. It also stands in direct opposition to Blake Snell's start against the Reds in the wild card, in which he only gave up 4 foul balls, which was the second fewest foul balls he'd ever given up in a start in his entire career. So just really different offenses. I don't mean to make the Reds catch strays here. I'm just trying to point out that these are different situations, different offenses, and that the Blue Jays were really scrappy. And just by fouling things off, added 22 pitches to the pitch count, got, Blake Snell's pitch count up and got into the bullpen. That allowed them to do something that had never been done before. And, I think sometimes it's exhausting, actually, these, it also has become kind of cutthroat. There's this, this underlying weird thing where I came up with that stat nugget first. And so there's been a lot of people being mad at each other about who came up with this. This is the third time since 1920 that a left-hander has thrown 10 strikeouts with 0 walks. You know what I mean? Whatever it is,
Yeah,
and
it's a specific skill, the ability to quickly research.
Oh, no, I don't want to take away from that at all. Yeah.
And I think it's a lot like transactional breaking news type stuff, where that crowd of usually 8 to 10 writers, where it's mostly 3 or 4 sort of getting out in front of a lot of breaking news stuff, seeing who can get something first. They've sort of worked it out to the point where they all tag each other and give credit when they have the confirmation.
Most of the time. Blah,
blah, blah was first, usually.
Yeah.
Choose the writer that was first in this instance. But this group of folks, also super talented people that I generally like, mostly all people I like, just start throwing those out there, and then people get upset because maybe one of the bigger accounts on Twitter or on Blue Sky amplifies it, and someone else I had that first, and then it turns into this whole thing.
And it's fair, and you should say who has it first. I do not know who had it first. I know that Addison Barger had the first pinch hit grand slam in the history of the World Series.
Yeah, the broadcast had it too. So maybe they picked it up from somebody else on the internet, or someone on the research team for the broadcast had it. I don't know, but we saw something we've never seen before, and it was pretty awesome.
That is pretty cool. I mean, I before the game 1 was we'd never had 2 DHs leading off in the World Series. And you were kind of facetiously well, have we ever had 2 pitchers lead off? And I think you kind of captured the energy of my tweet, which was kind of I mean, this is silly. Does this mean anything? It's like you're showing somebody like, does this mean anything to you? And there were people like, oh, but that's because DHs have changed and Shohei. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know why it is. But it is a thing that's different. Any case, Barger, we love him on the show here. We were bigging him up in April and May when we saw that how hard he was hitting the ball, how hard he swings the bat. He's got great power, pretty good plate discipline, and just was a left-hander that wasn't going to be in there against Snell.
Right. Comes off the bench, hits this grand slam. And that inning, I was rewatching that inning on Sunday because it was complete and utter chaos. I think the second guess theater part of it would be wondering if the Dodgers should have actually gone to a reliever that wasn't Sheehan to face Daulton Varsho. They got a handful of lefties in that pen. The reason you'd consider it is because the way the lineup was built in game one, you'd have had a lefty-lefty matchup against Varsho, and you'd have given up the platoon advantage trying to get Ernie Clement and Miles Straw. I'll take that chance, though. Mostly because of Miles Straw, right? I'm just not going to fear Miles Straw matchup-wise. Ernie Clement's a good player, puts a ton of balls in play. That's going to be a little bit difficult. But if I'm thinking about those three guys, the one who's most likely to burn me with a homer is the guy that hit a homer off of Blake Snell earlier in the game. And Varsho ends up working a full count, gets hit by a pitch. That loads the bases. He also missed a second homer on a curveball that he got out in front of, which, to Joe Davis's credit, he gave you the enthusiasm you wanted on a smoked foul ball. I hope you noticed that. Give him his flowers.
Yes, that's right.
Because it was crushed. It was just, he was way out in front. So it wasn't like it narrowly missed the foul pole or anything like that. But one of those things you're like, ooh, he was ready for that curveball. A little too ready for that curveball, maybe. So Sheehan comes in a tough spot. They don't go with the lefty. Ernie Clement singles. Nathan Lucas comes in as a pinch hitter. Interesting that he pinch hits for Straw instead of Barger, but John Schneider knew what he was doing. Derek second guessing that one. Doesn't really make any sense at this point. Lucas had a great plate appearance. He was down 0-2. He ended up walking. That made it 4-2. Andres Jimenez singles on a changeup that got way too much of the plate. Springer hits a ground ball to Mookie. They throw home to get the first out. Then they decide to go to a lefty because Barger comes up as a pinch hitter. They're like, all right, Anthony Bonda time. Bonda comes in for a lefty-lefty matchup. Barger fouls off 96 above the zone and eventually hits a slider up and in for a grand slam. That was the aforementioned first pinch hit grand slam in World Series history.
Did he get that by mistake? Like maybe he thought fastball, it was slider, and he got it out in front. And that's why he hit a homer?
That's what happened because I was looking at where Will Smith was trying to set up. Will Smith was low and away.
Oh, and no, he missed his spot by that much.
Well, the other part of that is the bases are loaded, right? So your target and what you're showing everybody on base might not be exactly where you want the ball. But I didn't get the sense that up and in slider was the game plan there. I think that was a mistake, and Barger was just looking for something close enough where he could crush it. Yeah. So that was,
if you thought fastball and you got slider in that position, then that's what you would happen. You'd get it out in front, and you'd probably hit it in the air. So, that was really interesting. I just want to go back to Emmet Sheehan a little bit because Emmet Sheehan is ostensibly in the circle of trust, in a very small circle of trust that is the Dodgers bullpen right now. But he's also doing something kind of strange for me. If you look at his stuff numbers for Emmet Sheehan, which you can do on Fangraphs, you can see that, yes, he has a 100 stuff plus on the slider, but that's below average for sliders across the game. And that his curve is also a below average pitch. He is a fastball changeup pronator that is trying to throw his breaking balls hard enough to make them good. So the changeup is his best pitch. And in 2023, when he was pitching, you saw generally he threw more changeups or as many changeups as sliders. Recently, that has changed. And in fact, this last outing was the first outing in which he threw more sliders than fastballs, or maybe the second of his career. So, he's really leaning into the slider, and the slider had good results over the year, but theoretically, it is not a great pitch. And so it's one of those moments where you kind of have the results on the field versus the modeled predictive results. And the model is saying this is not a great pitch. You should not lean into it. But over the course of the season, he had like a 255 slugging against that slider. So, for whatever reason, also if he's facing righties, he may not want to throw changeups to righties. And I'm suggesting maybe he should. I think Trevor May would agree.
I think Trevor pretty much always supports the right on right changeup.
He really does.
I think the other question people are asking about Emmet Sheehan is why hasn't it really worked for him as a reliever? He looked pretty good as a starter this year. I would say part of how'd the Dodgers survive the number of IL days they had from important starters that are now healthy? Emmet Sheehan's a big part of that answer. And you look at his career, he's been used 5 times in the postseason now in his career. All of those appearances have been in relief, even though his first postseason appearance was in relief of Clayton Kershaw in Game 1 of the NLDS in 2023 when Arizona put a 6 spot on Kershaw. Kershaw didn't even finish the first inning of that game. But Emmet Sheehan has allowed a run in each of his 5 appearances in the postseason for his career, which is bizarre because I don't think there's anything about him that would make him unsuccessful as a reliever. Like that just, there's nothing about it that makes basic common sense to me. Is it something where preparation or location or, the situation where they bring him in against the Jays is tough because the bases are loaded. Like this is an extreme with nobody out. The worst kind of bullpen situation to come into.
Yeah.
World Series bases loaded, nobody out.
Yeah, that's really
awful. But it's not just that appearance where things haven't worked out for him. Is there anything you see in Sheehan that explains why it's not working for him in a very small sample in that role so far?
I would assume that a young guy like him that's straight out of the minors, that has started and relieved in the majors in both of his seasons in the majors, that he'd be fine with, just taking the ball whenever he's given it. But, what I do see is generally he's lost his command as a reliever. And I don't know if that's is it because he's throwing harder, and so he just can't command these new shapes, at this new velocity, or is it, that he settles in as a starter and finds his command and is, built as an engine to go 5 or 6 as opposed to go hard at 1. So maybe there's a temperament issue. I haven't really identified it myself, but I can tell you that command is the thing it's missing.
Yeah, and looking at his regular season splits, 28 total appearances for Emmet Sheehan as a big leaguer in the regular season, 23 starts. Good numbers, 4.14 ERA, 1.12 whip. Reliever, 5 appearances, 1.74 ERA, 0.82 whip, 23 Ks and 20 2/3 innings. It, to me, just looks like some small sample randomness, being in some tough spots, having guys just take advantage of mistakes. And that's going to happen.
Facing good people in the postseason.
Yeah, it's just difficulty gets turned up. So I hope for the sake of Emmet Sheehan, they don't kick him out of their circle of trust because I don't think they have the luxury to do it.
Yeah, they don't really. Yeah.
I don't see anything predictive.
Who take his place?
Yeah, I don't see anything predictive about what's happening right now. I don't have it.
Yeah.
If you see something, let us know in the Discord because I think that'd be really interesting. The other thing that was pretty interesting in this game was Daulton Varsho homering off of Blake Snell. That's what tied it up at 2. The Dodgers had a 2-0 lead at the time, and I think Blake Snell tried to sneak some cheese past the rat in this case. Because this is, if you look on YouTube, you look at where Will Smith is set up. There's one guy on base in this situation. I do think this is more of the true target of where he was trying to go with this fastball. But
which
we
is
know
weird
Daulton Varsho is a good low ball hitter.
Yeah, Daulton Varsho loves this setup right now.
But down and away. Okay.
Right.
If you spot it there, maybe Varsho goes oppo, hits one down the left field line, and that's as bad as you get burned. Unfortunately, as you remember, location was middle down. That's like nitro zone for Daulton Varsho, and he took it out to center field to tie the game. But Daulton Varsho homering off of Blake Snell is one of the more improbable homers that I can come up with in this series as far as matching up hitters and pitchers and saying, what's a low probability home run? That's one of them.
Yeah, Daulton Varsho's career slugging against lefties is 374. I mean, he really, he does not have great splits. He's been platooned at times in his life, and the big source of it is just a complete drop in power. He has 90 home runs in his career against righties, and he has 9 against lefties in the regular season. So very improbable, as you point out.
Yeah. But I don't know why. Down and away, sure. Maybe you're just trying to steal one. Maybe you think you'll foul it off. Whatever. I was very surprised at the location of that pitch when it happened. Any other thoughts about Game 1? Anything else that you thought was particularly interesting? I guess I'd circle the command of Sir Anthony Dominguez in that appearance. That was about as good as Sir Anthony Dominguez's command can be in an outing, and that made a huge difference for the Jays too.
Yeah, I mean, it was also just a great way to kind of punch the Dodgers in the mouth. And I try to keep my vibes reporting and momentum discussion to a minimum, but there's got to be something to we're home. Hey, by the way, we're home, and we want to assert ourselves, and we want this crowd to assert itself, and we want to, make sure that the Dodgers know that we're not just a pushover, right? So great way to start it out for sure.
And Trey Savage, I guess we didn't really mention anything he did in the start. He gets through 4, which, given how shaky the command of his splitter ended up being, probably is a win relative to the stuff that he had that day. He worked out of a little bit of a jam, limited the damage to 1 run in the 3rd inning that really could have got away from him. 13% splitter usage. That's how far away from having that pitch where he wanted it was. I don't think that was a game plan tweak. I think that was my slider's working a lot better. I'm going to have to use that instead. So I just think for as little big league experience as he has, this was his 6th career big league start, he handled that really well, where his best weapon really wasn't there against one of the best lineups in the league, and he found a way to just grind through it. Actually got Ohtani early. With his first sequence against Ohtani was really good. Threw 4 pitches, I think, at 95, pretty amped to start off, and did throw one of his only really good splitters down and away to get Ohtani to strike out to begin the game. But it was a grind for Savage to get through those 12 outs.
Yeah, not only was the velocity missing, he was down a tick on his fastball and down a tick plus on the splitter, but there was a pretty wide range in movements. And I wonder if, I've had pitchers tell me that seam-shifted wake sometimes can be finicky. Clay Holmes has told me that he has a big seam-shifted wake sinker. Alex Cobb told me he has a splitter that he gets a lot of seam-shifted wake like Trey Savage's does. And when I see that he threw one with 8 inches of horizontal and another one with 15 inches of horizontal, that he's got 7 inches of difference there between different splitters, says to me that he wasn't catching those seams. He was something was finicky about the splitter that day. And so between the missing velocity and the splitter not really being there for him, I mean, really gutsy performance to be a Savage, and it just brings to bear the discussion that he has this weird slider that goes arm side. Most sliders break towards the glove side, break away from a righty if you're a righty. His breaks towards the righty and is just a really strange pitch. And so he leaned into that. You wonder if he gave them a bunch of looks at that shape, and if he has to face them again, if the slider won't be as effective the next time, because they got to see 32 of them. And they didn't do much with it the first time, but you never know what that sets up for later in the series. So really gutsy performance, though, to come up there as a rookie, be missing your best pitch, be missing your velocity, and go basically as a 2-pitch pitcher with a pitch that some people might call a trick pitch, like a backup slider, basically. Really well done by you, Savage. Shouldn't be overlooked.
Mason Fluharty passed his first Ohtani test as well. Sweepers looked pretty good. He ended up getting him with one that was very close on the TV box. It was a ball, I think, on game day. I think it was actually just barely a strike. And then he hit the knob of the bat with a cutter inside to Freddie Freeman. So narrowly avoided a hit by a pitch that could have let that inning get pretty sloppy. Got a little lucky too because the sweeper that he threw to Freddie Freeman to end that plate appearance got a lot of plate. And Freddie did not miss it by much. Hit a long fly ball to center that just turned into an out. So that was when Dominguez came in, was to finish that inning because Fluharty seeing more than 3 hitters did not seem like the game plan at all.
Yeah, and Fluharty against Ohtani deserves another look at real quick because he threw 5 sweepers out of 6 pitches. So he really didn't want any part of Ohtani. And if you want to pick the nits, it probably looks like, he might have been called out on a pitch that wasn't a strike.
It was close. Like, I don't know. Like I said, Game Day may have had that as a strike, but TV Box, which was a little bit off as it always is, definitely did not have that pitch as a strike.
Yeah, but the one cutter that set it all up was the first cutter that was just high enough. I mean, like, I think Ohtani, if he re-racked that, was like, I wish I'd swung at that first pitch.
I wonder if the Jays will just say, yeah, I think we're happy with Fluharty getting him one time, and we're just not going to use that. Not going to use that card again.
Or if Fluharty faces Ohtani again, he may just throw all sweepers and be happy with the walk if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. We'll see if that is a matchup that comes up again here in the middle pocket of the series. But a very surprising game one, but enjoyable because it was a surprising game one, especially fun for Jays fans with that big inning in the 6th. Let's shift the focus over to game 2. And I think just as everybody was starting to think, maybe the $400 million jumbo jet needs some landing gear in the form of a bullpen, Yoshinobu Yamamoto showed up again and was like, nope, we don't need landing gear. I'm here. I got this. 105 pitch complete game. Both starters looked really good for prolonged stretches. I mean, they were both pitching very, very well. We'll get to Yamamoto in greater detail in just a few minutes, but the big question in this game, if we're going to have second-guess theater from game 2, it's going to be on the Jays letting Kevin Gausman stay in. And this is a classic, but he's dealing. Eno, I'm going to ask you a question I've asked you a few times before. Is there any evidence that he's dealing is actually a thing that should guide decisions to let pitchers stay in games?
Well, we'll come back to Gausman specifically and this choice specifically. But I think the weirdest, most unintuitive finding from the analytical space right now that people just cannot believe, and I want to give them the space to be right. They might be right, but it's true. Analytics says there is no such thing as dealing. And when I say analytics, I mean, we had research from Connor Kirkin where he looked into the Blake Snell being taken out of the Rays situation. He looked at exactly things like that. And he said, what did the other, 20 Blake Snells do in the next inning? They all gave up. It was like a 4 ERA in the next inning. So, we had Connor Kirkin do that about the Rays thing in particular. We've had other research. One blog went through almost 10,000 games and split them up. And there was 5,000 games, a huge amount of sample, 5,000 games of a starter dealing 0 or 1 run allowed through 6 innings. And his runs allowed in the 7th inning, 4.5 runs allowed in the 7th inning. Then you have the not dealing crowd, 2,963, almost 3,000 pitchers who were not dealing. They gave up 3 or more runs through 6. They gave up 4.5 runs in the 7th inning when they were left in. So it's just, when you look at it from this angle, you're just like, the numbers as a whole say there's no such thing as dealing. There are some mitigative findings. One was that if you include pitch count, there's a slight effect for pitch count, which was probably just a fatigue factor, But that also found that, like, you could be dealing with a low pitch count or not dealing with a low pitch count. The factor that matters is that you have a low pitch count. You're not fatigued. You're still pitching well. We also have a finding from Rob Arthur that said there is a hot hand among pitchers in baseball. It is that some pitchers are sometimes throwing harder. And if they're throwing harder, they have better results. I would suggest, and I don't know if this is thought of as semantics or not, but I would suggest that that's not a hot hand. That pitcher is different. He's throwing harder. He is a different pitcher, and you can see that with your eyes. So there are some mitigative situations there where you can say, and I also want to leave room for the perfect way to say this is to say that analytics has not really found a great way to prove that dealing exists. The only thing that does matter is how many pitches do you have and how hard is your fastball right now? That's what matters. Not have you pitched 7 innings? Does it look like you found your release point? Are you in rhythm? Are the shadows advancing? Whatever it is that we hear, a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. If there is anything that matters, it matters velocity and pitch count. Now, back to Kevin Gausman. His pitch count was not high.
No, it was not. He had 1 out in the 7th inning and had a really tidy pitch count. He'd thrown 66 pitches to get to that point. So the pitch count was about as good as it can be against a lineup that good that late in the game. So from that perspective, why wouldn't you just let it ride and see how it goes?
I think that's a fair question, but you also have to put into this equation that Kevin Gausman has reverse platoon splits. Mm-hmm. And he throws a splitter and a changeup and a bad slider. And so given that reverse platoon split, I mean, I know that you have just on the other side of the equation, you have a guy who seemed like he was dealing and went through the whole game. And just like Yamamoto, Gausman's fastball velocity was fine. But I think once I factor in the fact that right-handers have been better against him and that Kevin Gausman did not throw a single splitter to Will Smith in the game, had not thrown one, and had thrown him 8 straight fastballs before he gave up the home run. I just like putting that all together, being like, if I don't think that Gausman trusts the splitter, and if my game plan does not have a splitter in it for Will Smith, and he's just fastball slider, then Kevin Gausman is not the right option against Will Smith right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was thinking about it from the perspective, too, of if you wanted to use Sir Anthony Dominguez again, like you did in game 1, you have a matchup repeat on consecutive days that you don't necessarily
you're not varying
want.
The looks.
So you're not varying the looks if you go back to Dominguez, but you could have gone to Varland there. It's the kind of move.
They've got Fisher. They got other guys.
It's the kind of move, though, if that inning plays out differently. If Will Smith flies out on that 8th consecutive fastball and Gausman doesn't give up another homer to Max Muncy later in the inning, or they make the change after he gets Smith out and someone else gets Muncy, we're not even thinking twice about it because it worked. It worked the way it did.
Right.
I do think the fine line on he's dealing, which even if you can't prove that it exists with analytics, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means we can't prove that it does exist. I feel like I can recognize it when I see it. I think, again, I'll use this example until I'm dead because I will have nightmares about this start. I'll have my baseball nightmares about Blake Snell putting everything anywhere he wanted in and around the zone against the Brewers. To me, that's like a command heater. So like you mentioned the research with the fastball velocity being up and that being important. I think you can have a command heater just like you could have a stuff heater, right? Mm-hmm. Where things just tick up a little bit. When both of those things tick up on the same day, it's like running through the star in Mario Brothers, where you can just fly through the level, run through anything you want. Nothing's going to hurt you. That is dealing. Like, I think it's there. I just can't prove it yet.
As an example, I think that sort of what occurred to me is we have a fair amount of mediocre pitchers that have thrown no-hitters.
Yeah, and something was working that day,
right? Like
for
isn't that
them,
sort of like refuted a little bit. It's like what?
But we also know
those days when like who's that guy that threw? Didn't Edwin Jackson throw a no hitter with like 8 walks in it?
Yeah, of course he did. But I mean, Philip Humber had a perfect game, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Those days to me are what I'm describing. stuff kind of at the max of your ability, location command, max
Probably
of your
a
ability.
couple lucky plays. We always
And
talk about
then
that one
good fortune.
defensive play. Yeah.
Always good like all of those stars have to align for that to happen. But as far as the he's dealing, so much of the analysis is going to look at the results and say, we're going to say, oh, well, results-wise, he's dealing. We're not looking at some granular, how crisp is the stuff, right? This is where the actual movement profiles of pitches and the location numbers as it's happening, that might actually support the idea of dealing being real better than anything you're going to find in the box score line, because we know there's noise in the line itself. We know there are hard hit balls that were atom balls. We know there are things that can make that line look a little bit better.
I mean, Yamamoto struggled at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like it looked like, I mean, the biggest struggle for him was the early innings, and then he totally settled in. And I agree. It looks like in this same game we have an instance of he's dealing. It's almost like, this game itself is a microcosm of our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Gausman's dealing, Yamamoto's dealing. Leave them both in. Oops, it worked once and it didn't work the other time. It's sort of what the numbers say would happen. But why did it work for Yamamoto? I think I look at this sort of spray chart where his pitches went, and I see that he's putting the splitter and the curveball in the zone, or like look at all those splitters like right up across the bottom of the black of the zone there. Yep. I think those were like fantastically located splitters. And a bunch of those curveballs in the zone, and then some chase curveballs out of the zone. I think this looks like a really well commanded game. It's interesting to me that this is in the postseason, the last two games for Yamamoto. They're the first two consecutive games in his career that he's thrown the splitter more than the fastball. And so he's really had to dial in the command of his secondary pitches to be as good as he is. He's not throwing the fastball very much.
Yeah, it's a deep enough arsenal. It's such a good split and curveball combo. It's fine. It works. There's no reason why that won't work. I keep looking at Yamamoto and I keep thinking he could win a Cy Young. Like there's no reason. Maybe if they're using 6 starters, the innings count comes in lower than some of the other top end pitchers in the league.
That's been less of an import to voters recently. We've definitely had more lower number innings totals win over higher number ones with higher ERAs and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like 173 and 2/3, I think, was the regular season total this year. That would have been plenty. We know he can run a high K rate. He can keep the ERA and whip down. I don't think wins matter to very many voters anymore, but he's on the right team to pile up a bunch of those too. He just has enough high quality pitches and command to do it. And this is
just weird that his he won 3 Sawamura awards in Japan already, and he's not even old. Like this, he could still be pre-peak, or he's at least in peak right now. So I don't know, man. When I look at the Dodgers, and I think no matter what happens in this series, this is a great team. They've built something that absolutely already looks like a dynasty to me. Yamamoto is going to be good for a very long time. How the other parts of this roster age, how Blake Snell with his typical command actually ages, is a fair question. How Tyler Glasnow's bad track record of health ages total is for both of these guys.
Yeah, like those questions are very real. We've even asked this like a week ago, how does Ohtani age as a two-way star? Like that's a question. And some of the other position players are old. Like all of those questions are there, but the next couple versions of this Dodgers team that we see over the next 7 to 8 years playing in October, Yamamoto's going to have a big role on probably all of those teams. And I think that's part of why they are going to be good for so long. They have a mix of old and young stars. And I think Yamamoto is now, with this postseason tacked onto what he did the last postseason, he's going to be recognized as one of the very best starters in the big leagues. Like we know from a fantasy perspective that he had that kind of stuff, but I just feel like we're getting to that broader recognition for him. Like, oh, this guy was special when he came over, and he's already special here, especially with the resume he's put together this October and last. I mean, 41-10 strikeout to walk ratio in the playoffs. That's 8 starts. 47 to third innings. He's averaging nearly 6 innings per start over 8 playoff starts in his career. 2.47 ERA, 0.82 WHIP, 6 pitches, good command. Like what else do you want from a starter?
Yeah, I was surprised to see that that this Dodgers team is not the leader in pitch percentage by starters in the postseason. It's they've got 67% of their pitches from starters. I thought that would be higher, first of all, than 67%. It is on the higher end. It is the 18th highest number out of 186 player team postseasons, so it is in the top 10%. But the Dodgers in 2014 got 76% of their pitches from starters, and the Phillies in 2011 got 79%. In any case, we've talked obviously about why this is the case and what is happening. But if you're wondering where the Cy Young improvement comes from, I'm circling the breaking balls. I think, we were talking about this before the show. The model doesn't really like any of his breaking balls that much, not even the yo-yo curveball. I'm going to give him that one because it has so much success. But the slider and the cutter, as you mentioned, look very similar. There's a velocity difference, but there's not really much of a movement differential. So if he can dial in a sweeper or, a hard slider that's different from his cutter, if he can differentiate the cutter and the slider better, maybe there's some upside there that can take him forward.
Yeah, I could see some combination of those changes happening. I mean, 27 years old, he's shown a feel for a wide arsenal of pitches. I think it's there. I think there's a Cy Young award in Yoshinobu Yamamoto's
fantasy
future.
Question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy. What number pitcher is he going into next year?
Can't be much lower than 6 or 7, right?
Yeah, he kind of hovered around 10th for me. I think to some extent I was maybe over worried about the innings totals. I thought you kind of be tapped out at like 160 if you really have a true 6-man rotation. But he was the rock of that rotation all year, so he got to 173. And I think once you get to 173, what's going to be the big difference between that and the 190s and 200s, especially if his ERA is low? But what you do end up finding is, like, if you look at Skubal and Skeens and Crochet, they put together more innings and had a similar ERA. So that 20 innings is kind of what keeps him, I think, out of the top 5 from a fantasy standpoint, about 4 or 5. But with Wheeler coming back from injury, Gilbert fading down the stretch, I think you're comfortable with Skubal, Skeens, and Crochet at the top.
Yep.
And then it's a question of Hunter Brown, Max Fried, Jake DeGrom, Christopher Sanchez
is up there. Yeah, I think
Yamamoto.
Sanchez has that workhorse ceiling where he could lead the league in innings. I mean, he was only
but
a
a
few
lower
behind Crochet
K
this year.
percentage than all those other guys. He's more of like a Logan Webb, ish kind of player. So I think I'd be tempted to put Brown ahead just because I think Brown is a workhorse. It's got a similar strikeout rate, but maybe it goes Yamamoto Brown right there at 4 and 5.
Yeah, I mean, Wu finished up there on the player rater. I think
But
lingering concerns about his health
injury.
knock him down a couple of notches. Nathan Eovaldi being 6th among pitchers with 130 innings. I mean, that's an outlier, just ridiculous, great season. Hard to rank him.
Push Hunter Green up into that group, maybe, but he also had injury concerns in most of his seasons. So I don't think I'd put him ahead of Yamamoto. So yeah, it's Yamamoto, Brown, and Fried, and DeGrom. But I think DeGrom, you with his injury hit pass, you put him below those other 3.
I'm going to say tier 1B if we're looking ahead to the 2026 position previews. I'm already excited for those. Those are 2.5 months away. I've got a little tearaway calendar, just ripping pages off every day. I'm not going to show anybody this calendar because that would be ridiculous. But it's a thing. I'm tracking it. But Yamamoto just phenomenal so far in this postseason and last year for the Dodgers as well, getting everything they paid for so far when they splashed that huge contract his way just over a year ago. Man, it's hard to believe, we're 2 years ago now almost, but nevertheless, the usage of the splitter, that was the big surprise, right? Throwing that split a ton. That's been the big difference, I think, for Yamamoto. The wrinkle, if you will, just pushing that as much as you possibly can.
You can see he's done it a couple times in his history, but this is 2 in a row where he's doubled up on this strategy.
Yeah. So the series goes back to Los Angeles, a 1-1 split so far. And if the Jays can find one win in these next 3, it has to go back to Toronto before it can end. I like their chances of getting at least one out of this middle 3. The Game 3 preview. Max Scherzer getting another start for the Jays against Tyler Glasnow. I know Scherzer proved you and I wrong last time out. Can he do it again? What is going to be the wrinkle, the game plan, the approach that he uses to try and keep that Dodgers lineup just a little bit uncomfortable?
He had this great start in the ALCS, Max Scherzer did, and he did it on 3 weeks rest.
A lot of rest.
I'm being facetious, but it was a lot of rest. That was 10 days ago. So, maybe this is just the best way to get the most out of Max Scherzer is just to get him the most rest you can so that he can have one of his better fastballs and he can leave it out on the table there. Now, the other part of that CS, other than the good fastball velocity, which we covered, is the most curveball whiffs of his career. I don't know. I just kind of feel that Robert von Scoyoc, the hitting coach for the Dodgers, the excellent sort of advanced scouting, I just don't think that something like that will work on their lineup again. You know what I mean? Like it can't even specifically be that trick because they'll all be like, oh, he's trying to do the CS thing where he's dropping those curveballs low, right? Like it can't be the same trick. And even if he tries to pull some other thing that's like that, I feel like this lineup will maybe be a little bit more capable in reacting to it.
That, I think, was the game 1 question we had about Trey Savage. High arm angle, very unique look. Maybe first time through it was going to be fine. Second time through, we figured maybe the Dodgers would adjust a little faster than some of the other teams that have seen Savage. But I don't even know if we get to see that play out because he didn't have the splitter working enough. Like,
right.
That's kind of the interesting thing about the next time they see Savage. The splitter might work. It might be a completely different way that he can attack them just because that pitch will be a 25 or 30% usage pitch instead of a 13% usage pitch for him. That changes a lot. But the Scherzer wrinkles is like, man, I learned my lesson as far as not counting him out. I just can't predict what that wrinkle is actually going to be this time. I don't know if there's a second wrinkle that he could even go to.
Yeah, I mean, his changeup hasn't been above average by Stuff Plus since 2022, and this was the worst year in the Stuff Plus era for that changeup. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh, changeups, right on right changeups. Max Scherzer would be like, I'm going to use my least used pitch just the most against you guys. But I don't know if that can be it. And, maybe it's just filling him up with sliders. Then he's going to have great command of it. He's definitely had games like that before where he's pushed the slider usage. So that's a possibility. But I mean, he's a good pitcher still. He's maybe not as good as that great start against the Mariners. And this start against the Dodgers will be tough. And I think, I'm not denigrating the Blue Jays to say that, based on the starting pitcher matchup, I take the Dodgers this one.
I thought going into the series, though, that the Glasnow game was the one I was circling as one that I was more confident the Jays could win. I think about Glasnow's shortcomings when it's not working. There's a walk problem, right? If he's not locating around the edges of the zone, I think this Jays team is patient enough to take advantage of that. I think if he's in the zone too much, they can punish him. I could just see them handling Glasnow a bit better. And I also think the other reason I was locked in on that as a matchup that the Jays very likely can win is because of what we saw in the NLCS, where it was the typical good Glasnow start. 5 innings, 8 Ks, couple earned runs. But that's 4 innings you got to cover with your bullpen.
You got to cover.
And even if you're planning on Roki for 2, that's still 2 more that you got to figure out with somebody. And I'm not sure where those answers are right now. I don't think
Sheehan
there's
and
any
Vanda
one of
don't
those
look that
relievers.
good.
I don't worry about anybody else they bring out of that bullpen as a particularly challenging matchup for the Jays. I really don't.
I mean, I guess Trinan would be an interesting one to come out after Glasnow because Trinan is such a super sinker baller guy that, like, Glasnow's been really vertical and have that high four seam. But we've talked about the diversity of this Blue Jays lineup in that, I think Alejandro Kirk is going to be a tough matchup for Glasnow because Kirk is really great at the top of the zone. He can handle that fastball. He can go the other way with that fastball, even with power. And he's going to probably spit on a lot of the low breaking balls that Glasnow will throw. So, that flips over, and all of a sudden Varsho is the one that, like, you got to avoid with Trinan. So what if, it's the 6th or 7th inning and Varsho is up and you don't trust Banda? And I mean, like, what do you do?
Throw a different lefty at him? Throw Jack Dreyer at him, maybe?
Yes. Actually, I think it'll be Dreyer.
I think after Banda's meltdown in game 1, I think you try a different lefty. I think that's
so it's
step one.
Dreyer against the lefties and Trinan against especially the high ball hitters, righties. I think that's the plan. Somehow and 2 from Roki.
If the Fox crew can go one sequence of Kirk hitting and or being on base without referencing his body shape or lack of foot speed, I will drink everything in the cup that I'm drinking at the time. I will chug the rest of my milk, my beer, my orange
like
juice.
That too,
I don't even care.
It's the friggin' shadows, dude. I don't know if they've done that much in this, but shadow discourse is at an all-time high. I was listening on some radio, and it was like I was literally getting shadow updates every other pitch, and I was like, and they were like, and now the shadows are creeping, and you're like, come on, dude.
The shadows are now 3 swaths away from the right side of the pitching rubber.
Oh yeah, and all these
how wide are the swaths, bud?
The coded Kirk words, coded body shaming type words.
You know what? Like, just talk about how good he is as a player. Like, he took some really good plate appearances in these first 2 games. He is a damn good hitter. Please stop reducing that guy to his body shape. Like, just talk about the other stuff he can do. Talk about his framing. Talk about literally anything with Alejandro Kirk. I feel like generally, I like Joe Davis. I think Joe Davis has been, especially because of energy, a massive upgrade over the Buck Smoltz combo. Smoltz is still Smoltz. Like, whatever. I know what I'm going to get from him. But that's probably the most frustrating thing the booth keeps doing. And they were even doing the thing where the graphics where they're throwing the height and weight on there. I don't know if they did during the World Series. I didn't notice it. They were doing it in the earlier rounds. Stop doing that crap, Fox. You're better. Well, I don't know if you're better than that. Just stop doing it.
Well, I mean, one thing that I love about Kirk, other than his defense, is, among the guys that have the ultra good strikeout rates. I mean, his is the 11th best strikeout rate among qualified hitters. He also has one of the best walk rates. So there's a lot of Luis Arias, Jacob Wilson types, Nico Horner's in this group, even Stephen Kwan, where you have a bad walk rate and you have a great strikeout rate. And it's partially because they can make contact on all these things. They don't end up getting into walk counts. They don't act like that. They pounce and they put the ball in play before they walk. The players that have a 9+% walk rate and a strikeout rate under 13%. There's very few of them. One's named Mookie Betts. One's named Jose Ramirez. One's named Alejandro Kirk. Another is Geraldo Perdomo. And then because every list has to have the third dragon with the googly face, there's Nolan Shanuel in there too.
That's me. Well, on the three host booth days, I'm the dragon with the googly face on this show.
No, you're not.
It's the DVR dragon. I hope every time you see that dragon out there, you think of me. The last question for today, Bo Bichette started game 1, got huge cheers, made an impact, looked good defensively too. I thought there was one particular play, had to range to the shortstop side of the bag at second base, make a pretty long throw. He executed it. I did not realize that John Schneider actually managed Bo Bichette in the minors, and Bo did play some second base back then. They mentioned that in the broadcast. Again, I think the broadcast booth's usually pretty good. I wonder if Bo is going to start the rest of the series or not. It's been really weird. Like I thought, why not have him in against Yamamoto? They started IKF, but they brought Bo in off the bench. So even if his knee's not 100%, I'd still rather take that chance early in the game with Bo if possible, especially against Glasnow. Like, I don't think there's anything about the IKF backup option that I'm like, oh, that's clearly better in this instance. And with Scherzer, we're not talking about a ground ball machine either, where you want the clearly better defender out there. So I really hope the Jays have Bo in the starting lineup again for Game 3 after using him off the bench in Game 2.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to do it without the brace at first, I think, and then he put the brace on. So he's obviously not at 100%. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Then his manager says, I didn't want to use him on the back-to-back days because, I didn't want to kill him. It's like the actual quote, but I guess that has to do with, he didn't have a rehab stint really, and he didn't really have the opportunity to kind of build up. A lot of times they have guys play 3 innings and then 6 innings, and get used to kind of the rigors of playing 2 9-inning games 2 days in a row. But I figure World Series, they're all running on adrenaline anyway. I think I'd put him back out there. I think I'd want that bat. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is just so much of a zero as a bat. And I think what I would try to just do is, try to get ahead. And if there's a time when, Bo doesn't look like he'll come back up again, put Bo maybe a little bit lower in the lineup so that there can be a moment where, okay, it looks like Bo's not going to come back into this game. Let's get IKF out there for defense,
That's what they did in Game 1. They used him as a pinch runner when the game was still 2-2 in the 6th and had the beginning. And then it was like, oh, you already get your defensive replacement in with a huge lead. So something like that makes a lot more sense. Maybe it'll be start Game 3 and 5 and then actually come off the bench again in 4, though, if the back-to-back is the big issue. Or maybe they won't use him at all in Game 4, depending on the circumstances. But I hope he's healthy enough to at least give them 2 out of the next 3 starts, because I think that adds even more to that lineup for the Jays.
I'm working on a presentation for the First Pitch Arizona that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and it's about the new bat stats, and I'm trying to broker a deal to maybe get the Driveline bat grades out to the world underneath the supervision of Pitching Plus, and so I'm doing this whole thing about like what the metrics are and stuff, and then players to target, players to avoid, but I have this one slide called the exceptions, where it's like I try to build a case for a lot of stuff you've heard on here about high tilt, high bat speed are the best players in the game. High tilt, low bat speed has turned out to be a pretty bad combination across the game, and on this exception slide, there's Freddie Freeman has the second highest tilt and below average bat speed. Bo Bichette is high tilt, low bat speed, and has a 37 swing plus. That's the Driveline swing grade.
What is the scale for that? Just so is that supposed to be the 100?
It's scouting. So
20 to 80?
Yeah, 20 to 80. So
he's got a 37.
Yeah, so he is theoretically a below average bat. I just find that fascinating because you can see in his approach things that you wonder how they'll age. We've talked about this a lot. His chase rates, his opposite field stroke. What happens when he doesn't have quite as much power? Does that turn into nothing? Does he turn into 10 homers a year? Like what happens with his power when it starts to degrade a little bit? But the 37 swing plus seems pretty obviously, I don't know if I want to say wrong, but it just seems like at least aggressive on all the things that we talk about, Mm-hmm. And so I just used that slide as a precaution to say, I think that the bat speed metrics are best used the way stuff metrics are used, which is way more important when you have very little information and way less important when you have a lot of information.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the presentation. It's sold out, by the way.
Yeah.
No, the conference is sold out this year.
No. I thought you meant my thing. Yeah, I don't.
Oh, I
we'll
mean,
see how many
it'll be a
people show up
packed house
tomorrow.
for you too.
I don't know about that. But yeah, we'll be doing a podcast there, so you'll be able to, even if you're not there in person, you'll be able to get a little bit of that energy because it's a live podcast, and we'll have live questions, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Just less than 2 weeks away. We'll be out there in Arizona for the Fall League. Fall Stars game is 2 weeks from today, so if you want to watch that, that'll be on MLB Network, probably like 5 o'clock or something Arizona time.
You'll see us too, because we're always right behind home plate.
Yes, that's right. Paul Stars back again. All right. Well, we are going to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord. We got our World Series game chats happening in there. We got our mailbag channel as well. So you got a question for a future episode, that's a good place to drop it. We're going to have a lot of draft and review type content coming up here once the World Series wraps up. So get ahead of the curve and throw those mailbag questions in now. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. Enjoy Game 3. We're back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.